So talk about the process, because I feel like one of the biggest misunderstandings people have about like how large game sites work is like how much heads up we have, how much time we have, the embargo stuff, like who gets to review them, all that sort of stuff. So what's the past couple of weeks been like in terms of like just getting games and then figuring out how we're going to review them on time?
Well, the first bit is like trying more or less to kind of have a plan about who's going to do what. The problem is, of course, that we can only do so much. Like, we have a plan and then things come in at one time or something comes in much later than we expect, and so the plan gets disrupted. But we typically have a good idea of who knows what games, and the good news is that all of us play lots of different games. So it's rare, unless it's something like a fighting game or something very specific like a wrestling, like WWE or a sports game or something. Typically, any of us, for example, we all played Far Cry, so that kind of thing, isn't too much of a problem when that comes in. But we more or less had people earmarked. Like, I sort of knew that we were gonna, because me or Randolph Ramsey, my boss, will talk to, the PR people in advance that are in charge of getting us games. And so Yubi, for example, is really good about giving us a more or less a pretty good timeline of when something's gonna come, and then we can plan around that. And this year, aside from Call of Duty, there wasn't really any event to go to.
Yeah, that's true.
We got the games. In some cases, that means we get a debug copy. For people that don't know, that's basically the final disc, but it runs on a test kit rather than a retail kit because it hasn't gone through manufacturing, so it doesn't have all the copy protection layers on it and stuff. But usually, like in the case of Dragon Age, which I'm going to be playing soon, we just got retail in advance.
Yeah.
And BioWare's like, here you go, play some.
Enjoy.
But if they did that 3 days later or 5 days later,
things can be different. Yeah, I mean, things can be tough. I mean, but the good news is most folks are really good this time of year about giving us a game in advance, although that's not always the case, is it, Mark?
No, this is true. It's not always the case. I mean, Assassin's Creed Rogue was a good example of that. That just sort of didn't turn up.
Yeah, that just wasn't sent.
Unity did.
Unity did turn up in advance, so I had quite a lot of time with that. But Rogue was just, here it is, it's out on release day, we went and bought the game, and then I went and just hammered through and played as much as I could and did some side quests and things. When you sort of, I guess with these games, particularly a story-based game, it is always about seeing the entirety of that story and making sure that you're seeing everything that you think people would see and do when they play that game, and trying to give it its fair shout. And trying to do that, with a deadline and all that kind of stuff can be difficult. But
and the interesting case study with Grand Theft Auto then, because we got it at the end of last week.
Yeah.
You were playing it all weekend.
Yeah.
I cut the video review on Sunday,
Yeah.
so we'd hit their embargo for that review was 3 a.m. because they figured once New Zealand it hits midnight, we'll just do a global embargo, whereas that's kind of a weird time to do it.
GTA is a slightly different beast in that it is not a new game, effectively. This is the same. They haven't changed the story or anything like that. They've put in some new missions, but the core of that game is exactly the same. So I played GTA 5 already all the way through to the end and did a lot, nearly 100%ed it, basically. So coming back to this GTA 5, it's a slightly different process. It's not about getting to the very end of the game and seeing the entire story, because we know that. We know what's happening in that game. We know how those characters work. What's important is figuring out, what are the new things here? How well do they work? What are you getting as someone that may already own the game and now want to upgrade to this new version, And it's getting that stuff across.
And Rockstar is at least, the embargo they gave is sensible.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to have the game before we got it, because it meant for a lot of crunching over the weekend.
Yeah.
But there are cases where, and people are talking about this a lot this year, and I suspect, or at least hope, that maybe publishers will take a second look at what embargoes are, because sometimes we'll get an embargo. So for people that don't know, an embargo is basically like the publisher's like, okay, in exchange for giving you the game early, we're going to set an embargo, meaning that we don't want you to post your review earlier than so-and-so time. And so that's part of the agreement. It's like, we get the game early.
Post your review, post gameplay, talk about it on
Right,
Twitter.
it's like
all
here
that
when
stuff.
you're allowed to do this stuff.
It's like that professional courtesy kind of aspect of it.
But when you get something that's like, it can go up 9 a.m. Pacific time on Tuesday, you're talking about 9 hours after the game has been out already on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Depending on the game, people might have gone and bought it and finished it before your review will ever go up. And we'll push back against that stuff, but sometimes we don't necessarily get anywhere.
Yeah.
But the more people pay attention to this stuff, especially when the game then comes out and it ends up being broken, for example, then that puts us in a tough position.
But like, there's a weird scenario this week with some, I know, Total Biscuit and a couple of others. PC Gamer said they didn't get versions of Far Cry 4, and then we're suddenly doing tweeting that as if almost like I felt quite angry about it, because I thought what you're doing there is basically sort of blackmailing the developer to send you the game, because you're implying that there's something wrong with it, whether or not there is or isn't. But the implication that we didn't get
they usually send me a game, I didn't get it this time, I wonder why.
That's really tough. You have to be careful because in the movie industry, you'll have the same thing. There's no advanced screening. That often, if not most of the time, means that. But we've been doing games long enough where I know that there's nothing necessarily implicit in the same thing in games.
Yeah,
Typically
no
in movies, you know that it's probably going to be crap.
Yeah.
But in the case of games, that's not really the case. So, for example, we didn't get Lego Batman well in advance. We typically haven't been getting Lego games in advance, for example. So, I remember getting Valkyria Chronicles not at all.
Yeah.
There's some games we just have to go out and buy.
Or we got Bayonetta 2 a month earlier or something?
Yeah, we got Bayonetta more than a month earlier.
Mario as well. Mario Kart we had for...
Mario Kart, so in the UK, Nintendo are quite good at sending the code out. So Bayonetta I had for at least 2.5 months before that game came out. They had, for that, so they have different embargoes with Bayonetta. There would be some preview ones, there'd be some review ones. Yeah, I just played through the whole thing.
That one's weird too. Nintendo's funny too, because at this point, most publishers sort of understand the internet's a global thing, right? Nintendo will do embargoes where it's we have this embargo in Europe and this embargo, and it can be really odd because they'll have embargoes in Europe days, if not a week earlier than the U.S. And they'll say, okay, you can't do it if a U.S. reviewer does it, but you can put it up if your UK reviewer does it. But it's going to the same place.
Yeah.
The internet.
Nintendo's kind of weird, and then there's, of course, part of embargoes is here's a list of spoilers we don't want you to put in, for example.
Pokemon.
And Nintendo
Which is great to read, right? Hey, here's a game, so excited for you to play it. Here's a list of all the spoilers we don't want you to talk about, but we're just going to put it right in front of your face.
So here's the thing. So a lot of games will come with a reviewer's guide, which promptly gets shoved somewhere that I never look at until I'm done with the game. So, especially with something like Dragon Age, where it's here's a list of things we don't want you to reveal. And it's but I don't want you to reveal it to me. Yeah. So I'll play first, and then I'll go back and check and see what those things are. And of course, even sometimes then they'll reveal something that I didn't come across because I didn't go down that particular story path or whatever. But and with stuff like Pokemon, Nintendo's really weird. Sometimes we'll get pages of here are all the Pokemon you can't mention are in the game. You can only mention things that happen in the first 3 chapters. You can only, and so what we'll actually do sometimes is then go back and do a second thing. Once the initial, we've done that with a video review for Pokemon before. I remember IGN did something really funny once in a Pokemon review where there were just big black bars over everything they weren't allowed to talk about in the review, and then they just took them out when when the game was actually released. So it's. This stuff can be weird and funny, and
sometimes they get the game. Sometimes they get the game early to you, and it's a game that you're familiar with and you play a lot, and then some weird online jiggery pokery happens that causes the problem. When do we post this? The Halo stuff was crazy.
So Halo: The Master Chief Collection was a whole different beast because it combined the sort of I've kind of played these games before that Mark experienced with GTA 5. You didn't need to play all of GTA 5 to write the PS4, Xbox One review. So I didn't complete every campaign in the Master Chief Collection, all 4 Halos, before reviewing it. But
you played it a lot, though.
I played it a lot,
played it tons.
and that was weird because it was a digital copy of the game. They sent us. We got the campaign first and had those for most of a week, and then they patched in the multiplayer stuff, and then they did that 12 hours before the review embargo lifted, which was the Thursday before the actual game came out and the servers went live. So that's another question when it comes to reviews is, online. Can I test online in a like environment that's reasonable, that I think is going to approximate the reality when this game comes out? With Halo, the servers, I mean, they went on, but they were very scarcely populated. So developers will like organize times. Like, hey, come on by Friday from like 3 to 6. We'll have a bunch of people there playing. But with Halo, what they were doing was custom games, inviting you in so you could play the game and you could like get a feel for playing Halo 2 multiplayer, classic or anniversary, which was a trip, like switching between those two. But at the same time, you're playing custom games and you know you're not testing the online architecture.
Yeah.
So for a game like that, what we did this time was the review in progress, sort of an update, talked about the campaigns, but then we held off on the online multiplayer until we could see how it went. And sometimes holding off on that is like not a great move, because then you don't have your complete review, you don't have your review score up when everyone's looking for it. And hitting embargoes, the thing we didn't really touch on, is really important for us, because that's when everyone wants to see the game.
Yeah.
That's when like the audience comes for it, and if it's not there, then people aren't coming to your site as often if they don't think if you're not hitting those embargoes. So we held it. Come Tuesday, the servers go up. They're not up. I mean, anyone who tried to play, I got tweets from people who like went and bought it at midnight, stayed up for 4 hours, got into like 2 matches, and like that's brutal. But you also understand, like, okay, we've seen it a bunch of times before. Online infrastructure, you can't really test what it's going to be like in the retail environment to that scale. Sometimes stuff happens. Totally. So, gave it a couple days, gave it all last week, and held the review until Saturday. But finally, it wasn't like the patches they were administering were not fixing it. It didn't get better. They actually took away options on the multiplayer side.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just choose to go in and play Halo 4 multiplayer now.
Right.
You could maybe get into a match as part of a big team battle playlist, but like
That's a major thing.
Kind of sucks.
and it sucks. It totally sucks.
And then it's
breaks my
reflected in
heart.
the review.
And then it's
on the
reflected
score.
in the review, and so that's why the game got a 6. And a lot of people are outraged because there's this enduring fallacy that like, a game I will play is a 7 or above. A 6 or below is a total garbage pile that was created by masochistic demons that just want to torture me. Like, that is so wrong, and that's not the way we write our reviews here. Like a 6, if you're ignoring a 6 just because of the number, you're missing a lot of the story.
The numbers are always tricky, and forever games writers will be talking about numbers and whether reviews should have numbers, whether stars are better than numbers, whether we should use a number of bananas,
Whether the number should change.
whether the number should change over time.
Yeah, which
this is
Polygon
harder
tried
and
to do
harder.
with-
I mean, how to take care of games and how to handle games as they, change over time. I mean, we're used to that in things like, say, an MMO or something like Diablo 2 or whatever. But then we have now, and every game is essentially subject to this. And I even tweeted earlier today that I miss when games were just released rather than launched, because we're now at a stage where we talk about things like the Halo Master Chief Collection launch. Why the F are we even talking about games like this as launching? Like, that kills me. But so that's why, like, when it comes to reviews, everything's just like on a case by case basis, and we have to, the reviewer has to look and say, when's, yes, it's okay to do this, but even then we know that doesn't mean that, maybe when that game goes live, the day it goes live, that it will be perfect.
And that's happened before.
And it's happened before, and sometimes if we're in the process, sometimes that means we just can't evaluate something and we have to wait, at least to at least attempt. But then we have to draw a line in the sand, and it's like, how far do we go before it's like, it's not okay anymore? We have to review this. I had a discussion, for example, yesterday with Dan Hines in the Australian office, who's reviewing Never Alone, because the game's just straight out broken. And then, of course, there's also another issue, which is that he's in Australia. The patches hit at different times. Yeah. And these are just the sort of things that we have to work around now in games where that just never was a thing. 10 years ago, for example.
And then obviously, like, making sure that you understand where the bribes are coming from, who's paid you off, and blah.
Oh my goodness.
I like talking about this stuff because I think there's so much like misunderstanding about the realities of actually doing this.
I mean, typically all that happens is, hey, here's, we have to plan kind of in advance when the busy time comes, because we sort of have to know. So I do talk to people at EA and UB and stuff like that. But you know what happens? All that is an email and say, somebody sends me, hey, we've got Dragon Age coming to you so-and-so day. And it's like, okay, cool, I can plan around that. I get an email to say, so we're sending Far Cry this day, and blah, blah. I don't know yet about when we're going to get, because a lot of times PR people don't know like when they're going to have access to games. And they're kind of, it's a long chain for them before it ever comes to us. And then, but most of the time it's like, oh, I got a game in the mail, or hey, this game's coming out next week and it's a week earlier and I still don't have it, so I'll shoot, hey, when can we expect to get so-and-so thing? But typically it's just like, it comes to me, I know who's available. It's like, here's your review game for review. And of course now most of our reviews are done by by contracted authors that don't aren't even in the office.
We've got some great freelancers, and then then that also complicates the question of once the review's posted, and this is something that's come up a lot with the Halo review, is what happens as the situation changes? Like when 343 Industries gets it together, and like all of a sudden you can get into a Halo match like that and whatever. Does the score change? Is the review updated? And then how does that change when it's me in house versus a freelancer who then you maybe have to pay them to do another updated review, and maybe their schedule is full, So in the case of Halo, like in the case of updating reviews, we have a couple ways to do that. One is to just sort of put an editor's note in the text of the review, so people going to read it in a month will see a different, the whole review will be there in its entirety, but there'll be an extra note.
Yeah, like an addendum or something.
Yeah, and so we did that with Titanfall earlier this year, which is a review I did. We also do second take reviews and other perspective reviews, though the bandwidth for that, given our
harder and harder
less than staff, tougher to do.
The famous one was the League of Legends one, because when that game first came out, it was a pile of trash. It didn't maybe work as well, or like it wasn't the game that ended up being. So we had like a 4.5.
But even in house,
we a 6 or 5.
Even in house, we sort of differentiate. I gave originally League of Legends a 6, but that was another thing because back then we didn't review free-to-play games. It was reviewed specifically as a retail package. But even then, like we view. Even now, like a second take is different from an updated review. So an updated review would be like the League of Legends review, which is like, or we've done it with lots of other games, like EVE Online, for example, is another one that we did. Whereas second takes is really not so much about how much has the game evolved, but like
different perspective.
I have a different perspective on this game, and we're going to share it. So for example, when Randolph did Disney Infinity, and it was like, this is, I played it as a game I play with my kids, so I have a different perspective than Kevin, and also Kevin is wrong. So
a lot of balls to juggle.
Yeah,
in terms of
but yeah, I mean, it's and people will sometimes ask, how come there's no video review, or how come this review came then, or this review got posted before this one. Are you saying this stupid game I've never heard of is more important than Major? Blah blah blah. It's like it's work, right?
It's more complicated.
Like when it's a lot more complicated than just I decide that this game is more important than this game. When you have a certain number of people, you have certain resources, you have there's lots of stuff involved. Like when we get the game, do I have to send it to somebody off-site? We run into situations like, okay, so I have somebody pegged to do WWE is a great example. Like I have somebody pegged to do this review that's off-site because I don't really have anybody in-house. And so that I have an author that can do it justice. And he only has a PlayStation 4, so even though we might ask for a PlayStation 4 copy, we get Xbox One.
Yeah.
And so that seems like such a...
And then the PS4 one arrives.
And then the PS4 one arrives.
But the video team needs footage, so now I'm playing WWE in my evenings to get the footage for when we record the video
and
review.
Then it comes Friday night, so that's not, if I overnight it, it doesn't necessarily give the author as much time as... So these are the kinds of things that happen. This is just one game. Like these kinds of things can happen with, lots of games in a week, and it's just a juggling act. So when you don't see a review, or when you see this review post before this review, or when like one thing has a video in review, one thing doesn't, it's just that it's all this stuff all kind of combined into one pot.
And it's a lot. And if you guys, if you have questions about it, I've been answering a lot of questions on Twitter about my Halo review. And if you guys have these questions, like reach out to us. We're on social media for a reason. Like, our bylines in every review is a link to our profile on GameSpot, and so you can send us messages that way. So this is stuff that we try to be transparent about. Writing about the circumstances of the review within the review itself is like not, we try to do that in the byline, like at the bottom of the review. So. yeah, if anything's ever not clear, we're here for you guys.
Yeah, and it's usually easiest. I mean, it's interesting because it's hard for me to answer messages on GameSpot per se, because eventually, like, I'll just have thousands of things in there, just because of the way the messaging system works and a lot of other stuff. So. And sometimes I'll get stuff on PSN or Xbox Live, and I'm like, I can't really, I'm not responding this way.
Yeah, no, okay, I got this.
But if you know, sending me an email is easy. It's always
response.
It's there in my byline, or it's easy because it's kevinv@gamespot.com, or on Twitter where I'm FiddleCub. Super, super easy to send me a message that way, because I'll answer it. You know, there's really no. I mean, I just want to unveil this kind of stuff, like, and be as transparent as I can be. If you've got a question, just ask. You know, there's no reason
if it was
to
something that
assume
we
because
didn't cover in this exhaustive conversation.